Good afternoon. I am Andrea Chisholm with the Midday News. Special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. Gunmen Monday evening carried out another brazen attack in Maypen, Clarendon, leaving one woman dead. She's been identified as a 60-year-old Patricia Harriott of a Hayes address in the parish. It's understood that about 5:20, explosions were heard at a location occupied by vendors just meters away from the police station. When the shooting ended, she was found suffering from gunshot wounds and was pronounced dead at hospital. The incident occurred just 2 weeks after heavily armed gunmen robbed a supermarket in Guineptree, Clarendon. The alleged gang leader and members of his criminal network were picked up during an operation on Friday. A manhunt has been launched for the remaining members of the gang. Opposition spokesman on national security Fitz Jackson says a special task force is needed to deal with the attacks, and that task force may include law enforcement personnel who have retired.
But most importantly, if you are not able to apprehend those who are driving the criminal activities, the mastermind behind these criminal activities, it is not going to end. It might pause for a while, but it's going to crop up.
Mr. Jackson says the root cause of crime is not being addressed and social intervention is needed.
Interventions are not one that give you immediate big results. So you're not going to get a big headline. No. Well, you get the good headline 5 years down the road.
The Police Federation has issued a strong warning that it will start the process for closure notices for dilapidated police stations. The Federation's chairman declared that the move is aimed at protecting police personnel from hazardous working conditions. TVJ's Kimon Witter reports.
An age-old problem which still needs to be addressed. The deplorable state of the police stations in which some of the island's policemen and women work. A few years ago, closure notices had to be issued by public health departments as the conditions became extreme. Such notices have been issued in the past on the Mount Salem and Barnett Street police stations in St. James. According to Police Federation Chairman Sergeant Patrick, the Federation is extremely concerned about the potential harm that may come to some of its members due to poor conditions at police stations. He's prepared to intervene.
We have police plans where Ministry of Health issue closure notice to because it is rodent infested and so on. And these are some of the conditions. I know that there are a number of facilities that could easily meet the requirement for a closure notice from the Ministry of Health. And that is my intention. And certainly that's one of the approaches that I'll be taking. This time around, I'll be partnering with the Ministry of Health, and where we recognize that the condition of such that our members cannot continue to work in them, the Police Federation will go there physically and remove our members and call in the Ministry of Health. That is where we need to go.
Sergeant Rowe says the concern is a common one among his executive. He says the discussion will be taken higher, as the Federation will be meeting with the Commissioner of Police, Major General Anthony Anderson. As to the formal procedure to follow,
I think due process dictates that, once we have identified those facilities, we'll write to Commissioner of Police, and based on what we have written and based on the response, we will take it from there.
In the meantime, opposition spokesman on national security Fitz Jackson is again calling for the requisite finances to be put in place by the government to upgrade the infrastructure of police stations.
It can't be that what the policemen and women have to work with on a daily basis is almost in subhuman condition while we're spending billions of dollars on high-tech capabilities. So I empathize with the police officers, and I do encourage and call on the government to direct the resources to deal with some of these situations.
Kimon Witter, TVJ News.
The Legal Aid Counsel will be helping mentally ill persons who have been locked up and forgotten in the prison system without trial. TVJ's Shane Masters has details.
Following reports by the Jamaica Cleaner last week that more than 300 mentally ill persons are serving indefinite prison sentences or their cases have fallen off the court list, many languishing in limbo for decades, the Legal Aid Council has sought to address the issue. Executive Director of the Legal Aid Council, Hugh Faulkner, says his organization is working to help these persons. The cases were brought to light after an ex-police officer, Walter Blackstock, was bailed last week after being in prison for 31 years on murder charges without being convicted.
The response from the Office of the Governor General suggested that Mr. Blackstock was not tried and sentenced. He was actually an accused but hadn't been tried.
So why was he in jail for 31 years?
It would seem that his matter had fallen off the court list.
Mr. Blackstock was accused of beating a woman to death with a hammer in October of 1987. Mr. Faulkner noted that one of the reasons which may have caused his case to be forgotten is a lapse in the process to get a mentally ill person to appear in court. He explains how the lawyers may have contributed to cases falling off the grid.
Your attorney would have had a duty to ensure that your matter is followed, and that sometimes it needs more than just a fit to plea, but a complete psychiatric evaluation, which is a more in-depth process.
Is it fair to say that maybe some of these 300 lawyers did not do what they were supposed to do?
Well, it would be risky for me to apportion blame, but it could be a general spread of failures.
In the meantime, Mr. Faulkner is asking family members of mentally ill persons in jail for extended periods to contact the Legal Aid Counsel. He is also asking the government to assist by creating a law to help the Legal Aid Counsel.
I think the law would have to be explored, because while the law places a duty on a person to maintain, for maintenance of family members, I have not detected a legal obligation in terms of, so I think the law could do it some changes to enforce that family members have a duty.
He was speaking on TVJ Smart Jamaica on Monday. Shane Masters, TVJ News.
And we'll have more stories in our midday news package on the other side of this break. Welcome back, and we're continuing the news. The police are on the hunt for 3 men who abandoned their car along Spanish Town Road on Monday. According to reports, the police were doing a spot check along Collie Smith Drive in St. Andrew when they signaled a blue Subaru motor car to stop. The driver disobeyed and sped off. The police gave chase, which ended on Spanish Town Road, where the car was found abandoned and its occupants believed to have escaped on foot. An assault rifle containing a magazine with 29 5.56 rounds was found on the front passenger seat of the vehicle. A Glock 17 pistol without magazine with the serial number erased and a single 9mm round was found on the floor. The Denham Town CIB is investigating. The sugar sector could be failing regionally if measures are not put in place to deal with importation. As we hear in this report, it's the view of the Sugar Association of the Caribbean.
There's an urgent appeal from regional sugar producers for policy changes to address the large amounts of imported sugar entering CARICOM. The appeal was made by members of the Sugar Association of the Caribbean, SAC. The SAC noted that 18 months after Caribbean sugar lost preferential access to European markets, regional producers are still looking for solutions in CARICOM. The association noted that sugar industries across the region are investing hundreds of millions of dollars to match quality and supply to regional demand. It noted that presently, more than 2/3 of sugar consumed in CARICOM are imported into the region duty-free, displacing market opportunities for over 200,000 metric tons of CARICOM sugar. The producers say they are then forced to sell the sugar on the low-value global market. The Sugar Association says if there is to be any integration of the sugar market within the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, CSME, then policy changes will be required. It says a failure to achieve this threatens a major agricultural sector of the region's economy and hundreds of thousands of Caribbean jobs, and questions the effectiveness of the single market in meeting its stated objectives. In the meantime, the SAC is reporting that over the next 12 to 18 months, it will have the capacity to supply the regional market with 280,000 tons of direct consumption and plantation-wide sugar, as investments are currently taking place to increase capacity. Shane Masters, TVJ News.
In news overseas, protesters in Sudan are counting their dead after a brutal crackdown by the security forces. A doctors group says at least 35 people were killed when troops attacked demonstrators on Monday. We have details from the CNN.
A new day in Sudan's dangerous impasse. Ushered in by gunfire and screams, the brutality streamed live on social media by protesters who for weeks had peacefully demanded civilian rule, now desperately recording the security forces' deadly response. They killed someone, the man filming shouts. A civilian lies unresponsive. In the chaos, the cameraman flees for his life. Witnesses and opposition groups tell CNN that the paramilitary Rapid Security Force led the crackdown. In this video filmed by a witness, you see a car stopped by security forces, the occupants inside beaten mercilessly. Despite these images, Sudan's Transitional Military Council claimed that they did not disperse the sitting by force. The council has been negotiating with opposition groups for weeks. Since Sudan's longtime strongman Omar al-Bashir was ousted in late April, the biggest sticking point, what roles civilians will have in leading the country forward. In the face of such violence, opposition groups have suspended those talks, calling for a nationwide strike and more defiance. In the capital city's hospitals, full of the wounded, hope for a peaceful power-sharing agreement replaced. They try to frighten us with bullets, one injured man is heard saying. We need leadership. We need leadership. The peace has ended now after this bitterness. Among those killed, an 8-year-old child, according to a doctors group. They say more than 100 injured are crammed into city hospitals, some with gunshot wounds, others badly beaten. It is feared the death toll will rise.
And in sports, there are still some issues between the Jamaica Tallawahs and Sabina Park Holdings, according to CEO Jefferson Miller. After reports that they might have been considering moving the franchise, a deal was struck to keep the Tallawahs in Jamaica. But Miller says the cost continues to be an issue.
Expenses in Jamaica, the rental of Sabina Park is an issue that I have. It's a big number. And I'm hoping that the folks at Sabina Holdings will have a little consideration and try to work with us and not try to,
General Manager of Sabina Park Holdings, Anthony Walter, is surprised at the ongoing complaints from Tallawah's management. He said both parties had meetings and they have reduced the cost as much as possible.
We have worked in every instance from the point of view of our partner. Our books have been open to the Tallawahs, so they know exactly what we are charging for everything, every item. And what we have done is no different than we have done in all previous editions of the CPL. And all we are trying to do is to find a way to make the thing work, just like everybody else.
And that's the Midday News. I'm Andrea Chisholm. Join us at 7 for the Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.